Even when you are pursuing your big dreams and doing work that you love, it's very easy to dip into burnout. I don't know if you've been there, but I definitely have. So today we are talking with my good friend and yoga instructor, Taylor Wray, all about how to identify the symptoms of burnout and how to prevent it with some really simple mindfulness practices. If you are not already familiar with Taylor, she's one of my favorite human beings, so let me give her a proper intro. She is a yoga instructor who's passionate about creating an inclusive yoga community. She loves to share the yoga lifestyle and what it means to live yoga. She offers mindfulness tools to help others connect deeper to themselves and those around them. You can find her all around the Phoenix area, leading special events, group classes, teaching private clients, and workshops. She also has co-founded a company called Livin In Flow, and this company specializes in yoga and mindfulness retreats around the world, where she and her partner, Tommy, share their love of adventure, travel, and community. She believes that living in your own version of yoga, you can truly come alive, shine brightly, love fully, be present, and embrace every aspect of your life. So I cannot wait to introduce you to my dear friend, Taylor Wray. Let's get started. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I get to share with you possibly one of my favorite human beings on the planet, Miss Taylor Wray. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Lindsay.
So this feels kind of silly. We're connecting via Zoom, and I just immediately flash back to the days sitting on my sofa in our matching shirts that said "Fry Yay." It was a weekly event. I'll call it an event. It was really quite the occasion.
Yeah, it lasted for months, I'd say.
It did. And Taylor was one of the people who was a safe space to share all of my crazy big dreams with before anything that people now see as powerhouse women even existed. And she has been on her own journey building her dreams, and we're going to get into all of that good stuff in a moment here. But I love to share about those stories. So many people ask, where do you find your best girlfriends, your girl gang, or those women who are going to support you? And it's funny how you came into my life in a really random way. But when we met each other, we just knew. We sort of were on the same path and naturally started sharing about these big ideas that we had. And I think we both knew we needed that. We needed that support to get through the uncomfortable first stages.
Yeah. I love thinking back to that time, because it was like we were just kind of like starting out, and we were at that foundational point, and we would sit and dream and say, like, do you think I could do that one day? Like, do you think I could really? And like, we're both doing it, and it's just beautiful.
We are doing that and so much more than I think those two girls ever imagined that we would.
Yeah. What was that, about 3 years ago?
That was probably about 3 years ago, because I was still writing the book. I hadn't published it. And you were one of those people that on the day I wanted to quit, and I was like, you know what? I should probably just put this little pet project aside. Would remind me why. And we got to do that for each other. So again, cool. A testament to having a girl gang. And I'm so grateful that you have been just one of the original members of mine.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you, Lindsay. It's awesome to watch you grow.
Well, okay. Well, I guess we'll move on to the content instead of just have people listen to our love fest.
How much we love each other.
We could also turn that into a podcast just for our own listening pleasure. So I want to take people back. I got to share a little bit about you and all of the incredible things that you are doing in the intro, but your story is one that is so incredible, has so many layers to it. So I think the best way just to ask you to share it is, how did you find yoga? And then what was it that had you decide to turn your passion into your full-time career and really this movement that you are creating now?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I feel like there's so many layers to it. So I'll try to condense it as much as I can. But I found yoga almost 15 years ago at 15 years old. And I found it during a really depressing, really dark time of my life where I was struggling with addiction. I was struggling with my own insecurities, my own depression, my own anxieties, and really just didn't know how to allow myself to feel what I needed to feel. And that's where my addiction came into play. But I also knew that that lifestyle wasn't really who I was. And it started a couple years before I was 15. And I wanted to like break away as much as I could, but I didn't know how. And I found yoga. And I remember stepping into my first yoga class. And it was just like the most incredible experience because it was just like the energy was just so powerful. And it was a packed class. And it was just like crammed in mat to mat. The energy was great. The music was blasted. People were feeling good, having fun, smiling. The teacher was really playful. And I just kind of was like, what is this? Like, this is way different than I expected. And I think the thing that I took from that too was like the community from it. It just felt like a safe space to be a part of. But I remember thinking at the end of the class, like, I don't know what just happened, but I feel really good without getting high, actually. Like, it was like the first time that I actually felt good without like self-medicating. And so that triggered a thought process of like, okay, there's something to this. And it was just this feeling of like, I'm home. So it took years of battling addiction and living this like lifestyle where like I would go to yoga all the time. So I was kind of living these like two lifestyles merged together and then sometimes totally separate. And at times it was like heavy into yoga, trying to live sober or just like live a cleaner life. Other times I would shift away from yoga and I was deep into my addiction. And it took, years of that, like until, I think 22. So years of kind of going back and forth and practicing yoga, loving it. And then in my first period of sobriety is when I decided to learn more. And I wanted to just dig as much as possible into the yoga lifestyle and the meaning and just all about it. I went through my first teacher training and it was just incredible, but I had so much fear about actually teaching, like about actually being seen and exposing myself and putting myself out there paralyzed me. So it took years again from that point of going through my first 200-hour training to learn to teach, to trying to teach, to giving up because I thought I wasn't good enough, to having the fear completely paralyze me and hold me back for years. To now, which is 7 years now, I'm sober. Went through another training to try to like find that confidence and just like find my voice. And to now what I'm doing, and like it's incredible what I'm doing is just like helping to spread the yoga lifestyle with others and especially working with yoga instructors. So that's my passion now, is actually helping other teachers find their voice and confidence and stepping into that fear because we can't bypass it. So learning how to step right into it to grow.
And I can't wait to dig even more into exactly how you're doing that.
Yeah.
And why it is the perfect evolution of your journey, which we're going to get to in a bit.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love to focus on, especially as people are getting to know you, you're going to teach us just some incredible tools today that I need. So I'll just speak for myself in terms of bringing more mindfulness into everyday life. But I think it's also important for people to see you as the entrepreneur and see that you are in the exact same shoes. I know because we've sat on many a sofa in our Friday talking about just the things we're being challenged by.
Yeah.
But regardless of how far we've come, I know I am still challenged on a daily basis. So for you, what's something right now that you are being challenged by in your business?
Right. Yeah. So definitely being an entrepreneur and taking that into like my yoga business, right, it's incredible and it's challenging on a daily, because I love what I do. I love working. So I work a lot, and I'm like, that's just like, I have ideas and I want to take action and I have big goals, big dreams. So the biggest thing that I have been bumping up against is, as I'm creating and trying to grow and stretch myself larger, I'm also trying to either prevent or recover from burning myself out. So yeah, and I know you can relate.
No, I was like, wait a minute. So as someone who teaches mindfulness and yoga, you are not exempt from experiencing burnout?
Right.
That was my fake shocked voice.
Yeah, totally.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And, and sometimes I actually remember in the beginning when I started growing my business larger, I actually felt like a fraud, because I was like, wow, like I practice mindfulness, like I teach others how to practice self-care, but I'm finding myself totally run down. And am I practicing what I'm preaching? And so I had to look at that. And at first I felt like I was a fraud in some ways. And now I realize I'm also only human,
Right.
and also do my best.
And how else could we understand what it feels like in the shoes of someone we want to impact if we haven't been there? I have had my own journey through that, feeling as though I can't fully make a difference if I don't have it all together. But the truth is, people want your humanity. They want
to relate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's something I'm hoping everyone is hearing themselves in that, because it's true for all of us, regardless of what we're teaching others, that we need that contrast of being in alignment with it, and then sometimes being out of alignment to know what it feels like and what we're really offering others.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so you also, in the grand scheme of everything you're doing, you co-founded a company called Livin In Flow with your handsome other half, Tommy, who's also one of my favorite human beings. I would love if you would just talk a little bit about, what does it mean to live in flow, and what are you two creating with that?
Yeah, so Livin In Flow was born out of our own just like passion for adventure, for travel, for actually living in our own personal flow zones, and really just what excited us. So it was born out of our own like big Euro adventure trip a couple years ago. And at this point now, like, so really what Livin In Flow means is just that, like, how can you continue to follow what excites you, what you're curious about, to continue to stay on your purpose and on your path? And that can be anything. It looks different for every single person. And it's sharing that with others now. So it's not just like our own, like, all right, so I share yoga and mindfulness. Tommy's a videographer and photographer. Like, we want other people to connect to their own flow states. And so Livin In Flow is that. It's really, it can be a number of things within that. And we're doing, well, what is also branded and called Livin In Flow is my 200-hour yoga teacher training program. A couple other teacher trainings as well. So I have a restorative teacher training coming up. And then what we do together is we lead Livin In Flow yoga and mindfulness retreats. And that's incredible, because we just get to take a group of people to different places in the world and share yoga, share mindfulness, adventure, like explore that area together and help them connect to their own flow zones.
Do you feel like getting people out of their normal everyday life is key to do that? Is that one of the aspects of the retreat that makes it so powerful?
I think so. Like when we can just remove ourselves from our typical daily routine, it creates space, right? So we get space to try something different, to step into a new area. And because on the retreats, there's a lot of mindfulness involved, it's not only a physical yoga practice. Within all that mindfulness, there's a lot of self-inquiry and self-reflection. So then they have this space and time to actually connect inside, to listen, and then to realize more, oh, wow, like maybe I want to try something new in my life. Maybe like just kind of having this inspiration to like shift something or to realign in an area that might not be in alignment. So we see a lot of people after the retreats just like do something incredible and just like connect more to themselves.
Okay, so I wasn't planning to ask you about this, but I actually would love if you would hear, or if you would share the story about your first Costa Rica retreat.
Oh,
How, well, I think it's just so perfect to show where, you can talk about mindfulness all day and practicing these strategies, and then life hands you an opportunity, we'll call it, to practice it in real life. And will you share a little of that story?
Oh, yeah. So the first yoga retreat that I've ever led was 2 years ago, and it was to Costa Rica. And it was awesome. We had a group, I think it was 15 people total, plus Tommy and I. And it was just incredible. So we were there, we're 3 days into the retreat. It's my very first retreat. So this is also new to me. I'm also learning. And by day 3, we were practicing yoga out in this beautiful open air shala, and the storm started coming in. And so it started hitting at like a really nice time. And I remember like feeling and thinking, wow, it's starting to rain. Like, this is nice. But then it just didn't stop, and it didn't stop. And it got more and more and more rainy and heavier and stormy by the night that night the power went out. So at this point, power goes out. And Tommy and I are like, all right, like, it'll come back on. It's okay. But the storm was pretty extreme at this point. And then later in that night, we learned that we're actually we're being hit by a tropical storm. And the place we were staying at did not have generators. So we learned the hard way. And basically we were without power for the rest of the retreat. 3 more days after that. And it brought up a lot for people. I mean, talk about my own stuff, like being the host of this experience where this is out of my control. Like Mother Nature just totally took over. And so I had my own things I was, confronted with about like being the host. But the guests also had a lot that they were being confronted with. The fear, the unknown, are we actually safe? It was pretty bad. And areas around us flooded out completely. Like we couldn't leave the center. And we were on a peninsula with one road in. And so at day 2, that one road in completely washed away. So we were actually stuck and stranded. And we had
on an island.
Yeah, on an island, because we had the ocean on one side. So we're here. And then we had the mangrove on this side. So we had just a body of water. And these 2 bodies of water just met. And that was it. So we're actually stranded on an island without power.
Which is unbelievable. Not at all the experience you meant to create for the participants, but I know from what you've shared after the fact, it ended up creating some of the most powerful opportunities for people to face their fears and to practice the techniques that you had already been teaching.
Totally. Yeah. And I feel really fortunate and grateful to have gone through so much training myself on especially trauma-informed training. And at this point, it started kicking in. Like some people were having PTSD. People were having severe trauma coming up and out because of this. It was pulling it out of them. So I was able to, in real time, teach and share a lot of mindfulness practices on helping with traumatic situations. And some of the participants were really faced with their own fear. And by the end of the experience, like we all got through it. We continued to practice yoga day and night. We still practice what we were there to learn in a much deeper way. And you're right. Everyone left with, it blew me away because I wasn't expecting it to have this kind of shift for them. But they shared, and, at the last closing circle, people were sharing like, this is the most I could ever grow was from this, like being here in this. You can't, like, I needed it. It was the hardest thing, but like, it was exactly what I needed to actually help myself grow. And it was just awesome.
It's so true about life that a lot of the circumstances we would never ask to bring upon ourselves are the greatest opportunities to face something we were really ready to break through. Mm-hmm. And I just remember being so in awe when you came back and shared that story, and just even what it taught you and Tommy about being with people who are going through their own process.
Yeah. And holding space and just letting them feel into it.
Right. Okay, so obviously getting away from everyday life, joining you for a Livin In Flow retreat is one way to prevent burnout, which is what we're going to talk about today, or even, do the work to teach yourself skills to bring yourself through it when and if it happens.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit and switch gears to, for those who won't be able to join you on a retreat this year, or, maybe you're just at a place where they need some techniques now. They need some of those practices now. Mm-hmm. Maybe it is for people like you and I who, on the surface, we're doing everything we ever dreamed we could be doing. Mm-hmm. And I think the temptation there is, like you started out by sharing, I want to work all the time. I love what I'm doing so much, but it's very tempting to leave no margin whatsoever. And burnout can easily sneak up when I'm going at that pace. Yeah. It's tough for me. I really am challenged by this.
Yeah.
So where's a good place to start, even to identify the symptoms of burnout? Yeah. Like, what do you personally look for, or help others look for?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think everyone's similar, but also different with like the threshold, right?
Sure.
But I mean, I know for myself, even like I shared with you before this, like right now I'm also healing and recovering a small procedure done on my shoulder. So I've taken a week off from teaching. And like, I can't even tell you when the last time I just had like 4 days in a row, like not working. And it was also eye-opening, right? Because I was just like, wow, like this is so important. Work is always going to be there because I'm a creative. I love creating. I love what I do, but I have to take this time. And I could hear, and it's just like in the retreats, right? Like when we have space to like slow down, to pause, we have space to listen in if we choose to. And that's where the practice of mindfulness is. Mindfulness is observing. It's observation, right? It's the practice of awareness. So when we just take time, and it can be 4 days like I just did, it can be close your eyes right now and take 3 deep breaths, right? Just this pause, just a moment to actually pause, to listen and to reconnect. So some signs for me and what I can observe in my students and clients is, moments of just overwhelm, right? Like we're just running on autopilot and we're overwhelmed and we might react more. So more reaction versus just being able to respond. Anxiety is higher, stress is higher. We can't sleep. We have our mind is just going or just racing. And sometimes that's good because we can create from this excitement, right? Like the mind is just going because we have so many ideas. But how do we turn it off? Mm-hmm. How do we slow it down?
Yes, I would love to know the answer to that.
Yeah.
How do you turn that mind off?
Yeah. And I probably should rephrase that because we're never going to just turn it off.
Right.
So again, it's the practice of observing our mind, and, maybe we close our eyes and we just lay down for a minute and meditate and say, okay, I'm observing that I'm having all of these thoughts, and actually most of them are repetitive. So out of all these thoughts, how can I just kind of like not attach to them and just kind of let them float by? and breathe, and then instead connect to my own body. Right.
Mm.
So it's almost just like not attaching to our thoughts, because we're not our thoughts. They happen. We have thoughts, but it's not who we are. And that's where I think we get stuck, is we attach to our thoughts.
Mm.
And we get stuck and we hold and we latch.
Yeah. And keep going around and around in the same loop a lot of times with similar thoughts. I love what you said there, because that's the case for me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's at night when I'm trying to wind down, but maybe I was just working on a project that was taking a lot of my creative energy, and the machine does not want to stop moving. Yeah.
In yoga, that is called chitta, and that translates basically as like the monkey mind.
Yes.
Just
feels
mind. Yeah.
Very monkey-like.
Yeah, exactly.
Very accurate.
Another thing that I notice in myself, and you might relate, is if I'm at the point of burned out, I actually don't have capacity to create. I'm completely not creative, and I'm not inspired. I'm just like, I just am like totally on autopilot without being creative.
Yeah.
And when I can step back and practice meditation or slowing down some way, practicing restorative yoga, a little movement, it can help me reconnect and help to ignite that back into myself by resting.
Yeah. I love that you're sharing too about just the simple power of our breath, because I think in the space of personal development and a lot of the different people that I listen to, meditation is a big focus. And that's not something I've ever been that successful at implementing. But for me, sometimes as simple as if I'm in the car and I'm in traffic, consciously just focusing on my breath for 30 seconds can be meditative. So realizing that meditation for me didn't always have to look like sitting down with my legs crossed and eyes closed for 30 minutes, that it can be as simple as finding a pause within my day. And that has made all the difference for me.
Right. And that's the thing too, is meditation looks different. There are many forms and many ways, and every person is different with what is going to work for them. And I love how you said, like, it might not look like me sitting cross-legged position, and closing my eyes, but it looks like this. You can find meditation in running. People can find it in working out, in physically moving their body, and even reading a book, taking a bath, right? Just something to slow down and to focus on. And it's really just finding a single pointed focus for the mind.
Absolutely. Okay, I love that. And then on the other side, I feel like looking at my own life and what I've had to put in place to prevent burnout so I can keep moving at the pace I want to move. A huge part of that has been setting boundaries around my time, blocking off certain days for just recovery. If I come out of a big speaking event, I know I cannot schedule anything for myself the next day.
Absolutely.
So what have you learned about setting boundaries around your own calendar? What has worked for you?
Yeah, it's also having knowing, all right, if this next month is going to be this busy, what days out of this next month am I going to not do anything? Am I going to say no? And opportunities present, and I have to say no, right? Or else I'm outside of my own boundary of self-care. And it's very similar to what you said. It's setting boundaries with my time. It's also understanding, I think more and more lately, just realizing, all right, I will always have more work to do.
Yes.
It's never going to stop. I'm never going to at the end of the day say, oh, I'm done.
With everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I did it all, because there's always the next as an entrepreneur.
So true.
And so it's more just realize, it's almost just this practice of surrendering to that for me. And just being okay with stopping. So I think that's a huge part, having those recovery days, as well as when I lead a retreat or a big training or also an event of some sort, we're so on that I've also learned, like one of my clients actually calls it, she's like, it's called like the post event blues.
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah, I feel that. Like we
Totally
created and birthed this baby, and now we have to like also realize we're going to come down, right? So like understanding that we're going to come down, we need to slow down, we need to not be on, but also be gentle and kind with ourselves.
Yeah.
And take time to just like do nothing and just be. And sometimes that looks like watching movies for me. Like it's not like this big mindful thing. Like I'm just actually just enjoying time on my couch in my pajamas.
Which is radical for me.
Yeah, it feels really good.
Yes. I learned that especially after the Powerhouse Women event this past year, which we went from year 1, a half-day event, to year 2, a full day, and just a lot more prep work, a lot bigger team, more people. I physically was a shell of a human the next day.
Yeah.
Full on, couldn't get off the couch. I felt as though I equated it to a towel that had been wet and you wrung everything you possibly could out of it in the best way. I felt like I had given my all. I had used up every ounce of my potential.
Yeah.
And I was surprised. I was really surprised by how much it took out of me. But it was also the most fulfilling feeling to know that I had given all of that. And I think it just lets me know now what kind of recovery time I need to plan in.
Yeah.
I think I've shared on the podcast before, I am more of an introvert. I love to be around people, and I don't, you know this about me. Yeah. I like don't know my boundaries. I don't know how to like half love people. I just like want to give them my whole heart and soul. There's like no halfway
You're really
with me.
good at that. Yeah.
So I need to recharge alone. And a lot of times that even means away from Elliot. Like I have to just fully just stare at a wall or go for a walk in nature, be by myself in order to feel recharged. And it took me a little while to not feel guilty about that, to realize that if I just checked in and asked my body what it needed, I needed to be alone and just to be able to communicate that to the people I love, that's just what I need to recover and be the best. Yeah.
Which is great awareness. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, and it's good to know what you need and to honor it. And that's actually the hard part is like, all right, like I might know what I need, but am I actually honoring it?
Yes.
And, right. So I feel like some simple things to also answer that question for me, like it looks different each day, but there's always something I try to do to like check in. And sometimes that's walking Sadie, my dog, right? Just being outside in nature feels really good. It's just like unplugging, being with my animal that I love so much, my dog, outside, and then other days it looks like restorative yoga and just completely being in, and restorative is such a beautiful practice and one that I've been more and more enjoying because it's the practice of like literally being still in a really comfortable, yummy yoga pose on the ground. And you just like stay in it and it's awesome. And this is something that I've taken from a teacher I've heard a while ago, is when the body is still, the body can heal. So in stillness also comes healing. And right now I need a lot of healing as well. So that has been one of my biggest practices lately as well.
Well, you know me, and you know that any yoga that involves laying in Shavasana for extended periods of time,
you and
that is my kind of yoga.
Yeah.
In Taylor's class, which you just have given me the gift of falling back in love with yoga. Your class is just magical. If you are anywhere near Phoenix, even if you're not, you should fly here just to take one of her classes. It's that good. But whenever you give the option, you can do a crazy handstand or you can lay in child's pose. I will let everyone know it is okay to lay in child's pose.
100%. I'm all about it. And that's, I love that you brought that up. I love saying that because that's when I get to give opportunity for my students to check in. What do you need? What do you need right now? What's going to feel good? Just follow it.
And I think that that's actually a perfect sentiment to start to wrap this up on, is whether you're in a yoga class or not, checking in. I mean, mindfulness starts with checking in and asking yourself, what do you need?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need right now in order to recenter, in order to collect my thoughts? Anything else you would add as far as just those simple little practices that can bring more mindfulness into everyday life for us go-getter, overachiever entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. Another practice I have, not necessarily every single day, but I try to do it multiple times a week, is like a journal where I write down 10 things I'm grateful for. And then I write down 10 things that I'm manifesting into my life, into existence. So it puts me into this space of connection with myself. And just in the act of writing and reconnecting to like what I'm actually grateful for is very helpful. And in that in itself is a practice of being mindful. There's listening. So sometimes it's hard to actually do our own meditation, but being guided is very helpful. And I love teaching meditation because I see results of my students being guided. So listening to even a 5-10 minute guided meditation at night, in the morning, lunch break, right, can be so beneficial as well. And I love practicing that.
And you did the most beautiful meditation at the Powerhouse Women event last year. Is that download still available?
It is,
if we were to link it? Okay, we'll link it in the show notes.
In that same link, there's 3 guided meditations total.
Okay,
so perfect. People have choices. Yeah.
Yay, I would love to include those. So I'll have you send me the link and I'll include it in the show notes so you can find that. But for those who want to learn more, maybe they want to attend a retreat, you have a couple coming up, as well as the opportunity for those who want to possibly take their yoga practice deeper or even teach others. You have an upcoming yoga teacher training. So do you want to share a little bit more about all that you have going on the rest of this year?
All the things. Yeah, I would love to. Yoga retreats, we've got July, we're going to Bali, which has been on the top of my list for years. So it's a dream come true that we're going. So there is still time to join, and that's exciting. And it's 5 nights, 6 days in beautiful Bali. And then we've got Sedona. So if it's hard to travel across the world, then it's easy to get to Sedona, which is only 2 hours from Phoenix. So that's nice. But that's a 3-night retreat. So it's one of those little like weekend getaways where we can just like get away for 3 nights and unplug. And Sedona is just magical. So that's in October. And then yoga teacher training. So it's a 200-hour program, and it starts in September and runs through February with a lot of holiday breaks in it. So that's really good. But this is incredible. And I just led my first one, and it was the most magical experience of my entire life. It truly was. And I just can't wait. So it's for anyone that is learning, who wants to learn just more about yoga, how to take this, what we're talking about, in a huge scale. And these are tools that you can take with you forever. Yeah. And that's what's incredible. Is this freedom to have this in your own pocket. Yeah.
And that teacher training is happening in Phoenix.
Yep.
So for those of you who want to travel here or who are local, Taylor and I both live in Phoenix, where can they find out more about the retreat, the YTT, and all of the things?
Yeah, so that is on my website. It's taylorrayyoga.com.
Okay, perfect.
Or Instagram, Taylor Wray Yoga.
Well, and we do love to hang out on Instagram. I know both you, and given that you have the partner in life that you do, who is just so great at creating video. By the way, this is like an unsolicited plug for Tommy. He does all of our video for Powerhouse Women, and that is why everything always looks so cool.
Yeah.
I will come to him with the craziest of ideas, and he makes them happen.
Like, yeah, let's do it.
But I sort of feel like I want to end this with a collective deep breath, you and I, and for our listeners, because this may be for you listening to this. Maybe you're in the car, you're on a run, wherever you are. I just literally want you to stop right now, and we're going to take a giant deep breath in.
Yep. And out.
It just feels good. It feels so good.
It really does.
So, wherever you are, I just want to remind you that you are not in this alone. You have people like myself, like Taylor, who are on this journey with you. We do not have it all figured out, and you don't have to either. So, if any part of your feelings of burnout are because you feel like you have to have it all together, let me just go ahead and remove that from your plate, because you won't. You won't ever have it all together. That is not your burden to carry.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to free you up so you can continue to make the difference that you are meant to make in the world.
I love that.
I love you, and thank
you
so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Lindsay.